There are updates. We want to let people know that if it's been a while, there's updates on the website at DOT. But we want to take the opportunity today to answer questions regarding ongoing work on the Washington Bridge. So right now, expert engineers are doing a thorough review of the bridge, and that work is ongoing as we speak. And we want Rhode Islanders to know that the direction we take with this project will be driven by the facts we get from the expert engineers. No final decisions can or will be made until we have all the facts from the engineers. And once again, I want to thank the people of Rhode Island for the patience as we work to get the bridge open as quickly as possible and as safely as possible. Safety being the key word. With that, I'll turn it over to Director Alviti, who'll give some updates and answer your questions. Director?
Hi. So we here at RIDOT have been working 24/7, so have our consultants and workers. We have met with our consulting engineers on a continuous basis, and they're going to continue to do their work. And brought in, these consultants actually brought in additional personnel from throughout the United States, other expert engineers, structural engineers, to expedite the inspections and analysis that they're performing for us. The analysis that they're doing is complex. It's a rather complex structure, and it takes time for them to do it and to do it right. I want to assure everyone we're all working, all of us, me included, working 24/7 to ensure that we have this analysis and a comprehensive look at the bridge structure that'll result in a bridge that will be long-lasting and safe. The forensic analysis has begun. Testing on the particular rod that we found, there were a number of rods, tension rods, is in process. They're performing chemical analysis on it. We have several consultants, not just one, several consultants that are assessing the condition of the full bridge structure. The structural engineering consultants brought in additional staff, as I said, to expedite the process. These consultants, what they find will determine the scope of the work that we need to do in order to correct any deficiencies on the bridge. They could come in with a number of different scenarios to us, depending upon what they find and what extent the repairs are necessary. It could be a repair of the existing structure, although extensive. It could be a reconstruction of various components of the bridge structure, or it could be a complete rebuild of the entire bridge. We need to get all of the facts. As the governor said, we need to have all of the engineering facts in place before we determine the final course of action on this. We're in that evaluation process. Regardless of the scope that the consultants recommend to us, we are strategizing various construction scenarios for any one of those three scenarios. We have engineers and scientists working on what those scenarios may be and simultaneously working on solutions that will provide a rebuild and a reinstitution of traffic flow through there as quickly as possible, even in phases if we can do that. We're looking at our finances, making sure that the existing funding that we have in place will allow us to continue the work that we're doing. So there'll be no stop in progress on any one of those scenarios due to funding. And we're also at the same time creating contingency plan if the value of the improvements that we need to make are beyond the scope of the funding that we currently have in place. And our finance folks are doing a great job at putting together all of the contingency, plan A, plan B, plan C. The contract we're working on now to reconstruct the project has been concentrating on parts of the bridge structure that need to be fixed regardless of what happens to this next phase of work on the rest of the bridge. The ramp to East Providence that they're constructing, and all of the other components that they're currently working on, we're keeping them working on those, because regardless of what happens with the work we need to do on the rest of the structure, those features that they're putting in place now will be useful and usable. Our bridge engineers are looking at other bridges in our inventory to make sure that none of them contain the kind of critical elements that this particular bridge did, and they're combing our inventory to make sure that that doesn't happen, and performing additional inspections and additional analyses. The FHWA, the Federal Highway Administration, has offered, and we accepted, to work with us on all aspects: the inspection, the structural analysis, the funding, and in the development of the scope of work that we're doing. Their engineers are working in concert with our engineers, and they're providing a very vital partnership in this. We will be using rapid construction, regardless of what the scope of the new construction is. We will be utilizing rapid bridge construction that you have seen us implement a number of times throughout bridges in Rhode Island, some 400 bridges that we've already rebuilt in the last 7 years. And we'll be looking to those same accelerated bridge construction kind of technologies that will help accelerate this project even more. And we're preparing for all the contingencies so that we're giving this project priority over all of the projects that we're doing here in Rhode Island, although the progress on all of them will continue. So that concludes my presentation, but certainly we'll be happy to take any questions.
We'll start with Gabrielle.
Yes, so you mentioned the engineering consultants looking over the full scope of this bridge, and that tearing it down is a possibility. Do you have a timeline for when you expect to get recommendations from those consultants? And if a rebuild completely is necessary, would it be cheaper, faster, more efficient to just do that now as opposed to in a few years from now?
Yeah, I don't think any of the scenarios that we're looking at are going to be a few years from now. I think that the term in which we're looking to get the answers from our consultants is more near-term than that, like quickly. And we'll be making decisions. And certainly as we go along, we're going to keep everybody abreast of the information as we're doing today as we get it.
Do you know how quickly, though, you'll have those recommendations?
I don't. You know, the engineers that we're working on it are continuing to look at various components of this bridge, and that takes time. And I can't have them determine their outcomes based on time constraints. I need them, and we all need them, to do a very thorough, comprehensive, expert look at every component of that bridge.
Director, we'll go to Kate next.
What prompted this review, and was it planned? And also, will this impact any current work that's happening on the bridge?
So the review that we're doing is in over 400 bridges that we've completed already during the last several years. We have done these kinds of reviews a number of times. When you rebuild an existing structure, especially one that was built in 1968, as you do the construction, you tend to uncover some additional kinds of deficiencies. And that's what we're doing here. We're following that same procedure.
So you guys have found some deficiencies?
Say it again, please.
You guys have found some deficiencies beyond the pins?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's ongoing, but the full scope is what will determine the amount of work and how long it'll take.
And is construction ongoing otherwise?
Oh, yes. Yeah, as I said, in the initial phases of this, we're building components of this bridge that we'll be using regardless of how we reconstruct the remaining portion of it.
Patrick?
Director, two-part question. One, it sounds from like what you're saying that as inspectors have gotten in there, the engineers have gotten in there and looked at the components of this bridge, they've found things that appear worse than initially we thought. a month ago when we were first in this room. So what did you say, if that is accurate, that they have found it, the condition is worse than you thought, and then two, if a full reconstruction is needed, what's the time frame on how long that would take?
Yeah, so I'm not going to speculate on the scope of additional deficiencies that they found until we have their complete report in. I think we owe it to them and we owe it to the public to report on things that we know rather than the things we speculate. And likewise with the schedule, depending upon the scope of deficiency that they find, that will determine how long it's going to take to rebuild.
Director, is there a new, the original timeline I think was 3 months, and I think last week you told Gene Belicenti that's been bumped up a little bit. Is that now out the window and we're just not sure how long it's gonna take based on this new information?
Yeah, I think the information that we're receiving and that ultimately the finality of the analyses and reports and inspections that they're doing will help us define the scope, and that will help us define how long it's going to take. I assure you of this, that whatever the scope of the work, we will be using accelerated and phased construction to get lanes reopened as quickly as possible.
But it's still indefinite based on this.
It's indefinite as of now, and we'll keep you abreast as the analysis progresses.
Josh?
Do we have any estimates on cost at this point? Obviously, you mentioned you were talking about this worst-case scenario of rebuild. Do we know how much this might cost for either?
Yeah, well, as I said, the analysis itself is going to provide us with the amount of work that we need to do, and that will determine the cost of the repairs. We are preparing, however, for all contingencies in terms of funding, whether it be the same as what we said it was going to be or more. We are preparing for all the contingencies so that we have a funding plan in place to be able to not stop the progress of the work. The progress of the work will keep going.
Do we have a number we can tie to that, or not?
No,
something
not,
we know yet?
as I said, the analysis that we're getting will determine the scope, which will determine the cost and schedule.
And then Pat, last question.
Director Alviti, despite the frigid temperatures outside, spiritually, the summer Newport, Aquidneck Island tourist season really begins with the St. Patrick's Day Parade.
It does, it does.
What type of contingency planning is taking place right now to facilitate what hopefully will be a wonderful spring and summer for the people in Newport?
So, look, we have our Newport to Providence ferry system that we set up. We're going to continue that service. I assure you that is a very successful service to get people back and forth between the capital city and Newport and back to the capital city. In terms of the Newport Bridge, some of the construction that the Rhode Island Turnpike and Bridge is doing there is scheduled to be completed by that time to assure that people will be able, and tourists will be able to get to and from the Aquidneck Island efficiently.
Any
The
talk,
testing-
just quick
the
follow-up,
testing
any
on-
talk of reestablishing alternative ferries or whatever to the East Bay, Bristol,
No.
Warren,
No, we're not.
for the summer?
No.
All right, thank you
The
guys.
testing on the pins, what exactly are you guys trying to find out?
It's a forensic analysis that determines what forensics find out, why it failed, when it failed, and what are the conditions around it.
Director,
That's
do
it.
you
Thank you
know
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you
if
guys.
it doesn't get caught sooner?
Supplies that might need to be torn down?